Hi everyone, it's Chris and welcome to another video. Thanks for joining me today, and thank you for everyone who takes the time to watch these videos, to subscribe, to like and to leave a comment. I really appreciate the interaction and the interest in this kind of stuff that I do. So if you do like the content of the channel, give it a thumbs up. Thank you. Okay, today I'm going to look at North American rock albums from the 1970s and specifically debut albums. So I've got about 40 albums to share with you, maybe slightly more than that in fact. Now, I'm not going to include the Eagles' first album or Jackson Browne's first album or Big Star or Naturally by J.J. Cale. I'm not going to include The Idiot by Iggy Pop. Fundamentally, they're not riffy enough. So if there's any criteria for getting into this list, it needs to have some kind of electric guitar riff kind of stuff in it. So, but I've got some albums that are missing. So I've written these down, and just off the top of my head, I'm probably missing others as well. But I haven't got the first album by ZZ Top, or the first album by Canadian band Triumph, or the first album by Elf. And there's one significant album that I don't have that I must try and find, but every time I see it, it's quite expensive and I haven't bought it yet. And that's the debut album from New York Dolls. I don't have that in my collection. I should, because I love things like Personality Crisis and so on. So I must try and find that album, but that's missing from this list. There's not many obscure records in this list. Now, obscure records are obscure, which means they are hard to find. And when you do find them, they're probably fairly expensive as well, and both those two things kind of put me off a bit. The other reason I haven't picked them up is quite often that obscure albums are obscure for a reason, and that is they're a bit crap. And they're just kind of niche, and I haven't got many obscure. But if I did have two particular albums, they would be going in this list. One of them is Kingdom Come by Sir Lord Baltimore, who I think are a New York band. And the other album I would include, which is quite obscure, is a self-titled debut from Dust, which is, again, I think they're a New York band. They include Mark Bell in their ranks, who went on to be Marky Ramone, but that's a really good debut album too. And if I had those two fairly obscure albums, they would be in this list, but I haven't. I've also got a couple of albums, three fundamentally, I think it is, three, that I find really hard to place, and I wasn't sure whether or not they were riffy enough to include. It's the debut album from Talking Heads, which I've got a lot of time for, I really enjoy, but I don't know if it's rocky enough. And I don't think the debut album from Patti Smith is rocky enough either, although in things like Gloria and Free Money and Land, I think there's some tremendous songs on there. But I haven't included that. And I haven't included the debut from B-52s, which is a really difficult album to kind of place in terms of its genre. New wavy, yes. Is it rocky? Well, I don't know really, but it's strange. But, you know, that hasn't made it. And these two possibly should be in that list, because there is some guitar moments in it. In this one, less so. Although interesting enough, the title track used to get into the sort of top 30 heavy metal songs of all time according to Kerrang. So, you know, maybe I should have included it, but I haven't, because I think there's a lot of kind of big ballady songs on that rather than rockers. And this particular album as well, which has got some of the most fiery guitar known to man on it, I didn't know whether or not I should include this, because fundamentally it's a groundbreaking fusion album. So this is the Mahavishnu Orchestra, the Inner Mountain Flame, and the guitar work from John McLaughlin on here is absolutely out of this world. So Meetings of the Spirit, you know, the Noonwood Race, you know, the guitar work on here is amazing, but I didn't think it quite fitted. So what I've got is about 40 albums, 40 debut albums from North American bands from the 1970s. So let me know what you think about this lot and what ones you would have included. So we've got the debut album from Yesterday and Today. So this was the band who went on to be Y&T. And I remember the first album I bought by them, which was in about 1981, was called Earthshaker, which is an absolutely tremendous hard rock album. It really is. And there's a song on here called Earthshaker, which is half decent. This is unusual for a debut because the second side I think is considerably better than the first. So Earthshaker, Fast Ladies, Alcohol, Beautiful Dreamer, all better songs than what's on side one. So that's at the bottom of the pile. Next up, we've got Toto's first album. Now, I'd love Hold the Line. I think it's a sensational song, but I think that's the strongest song on here by a considerable distance. Charles Anthem, I'll Supply the Love. There's some decent sort of soft rock songs, but it's not quite riffy enough. But the band, who were basically a session band for everyone in the 1970s, you know, they actually are a really competent outfit, but some of the songs just aren't strong enough for me. Next up, a little bit of a punky one here. So this is Richard Hell and the Voidoids. I think he originally was with Television, then went solo. This is Blank Generation. It's got some great songs on here. Love Comes in Spurts, Blank Generation, Another World. There's some good songs on there and some good riffy songs on there. So that's just made it. So I've got a little bit of a mix of genres here slightly. The next band is an American band who probably would be regarded as prog, and that's few and far between. At least some of their stuff is proggy, probably their 70s output, not so much their 80s. And that's the debut album from Kansas, self-titled. It's not a bad album, this at all. There's some really good moments. It's a mix of kind of some proggy moments, but also some kind of boogie stuff. There's a song called Belexis, which is quite a boogie rock song, which is pretty good. It's instrumentally very strong. There's a couple of songs on here that are very proggy. So Journey from Maria Brom and Death of Mother Nature Sweet. I mean, that's sensationally proggy song titles there. But yeah, that's a decent album. There's a bit, the violin is a bit too much for me on that, but it's okay. Next up, this is at number 36, the debut album from Cheap Trick. They went on to considerably better things than this. I think the next 3 albums after this and their live album are really solid hard rock, sort of power pop albums. This is okay, it's a good debut, you know, and it really sets the scene for their career, but it's not as strong as the next few. Next up is a I think quite an underrated band, but they do possess one of the best band logos ever. This is the debut album from Stars from about 76. Boys in Action, Detroit Girls, Live Wire, some really good songs on there. Really good solid hard rock band. Again, they did better albums, Colosseum, Rock Violation being 2, but that's a good solid debut. Really good debut. In fact, I think this is possibly their strongest album, possibly, and I think that's quite often the case with quite a few of these. Their debut is in fact their strongest. I think that's possibly the case for the first album from the Marshall Tucker Band. You might be surprised to see that in here possibly. It's Southern rock band, but you know, it's riffy and guitar based enough to be included. Ramblin', for example, is great. Take the Highway's good. Can't You See, which is quite a famous song by them, is tremendous. They were really competent musicians, I think, Marshall Tucker. Next up, a little bit of AOR from Eddie Money. This is his debut. Again, I think he went on to do better things, but No Control being one of those albums. But this is a really solid debut. It's got a couple of his classics. 2 Tickets to Paradise, Baby Hold On, really good AOR songs. Next up is a band that are produced by Mike Stone, who produced quite a lot of kind of, you know, North American hard rock and AOR albums. And this is produced by him and Paul Stanley of Kiss. And the band are New England. I think they are from Boston, but that name was already taken, so they went with New England. And this is a decent album. It's got... in Don't Ever Wanna Lose You, one of the greatest AOR songs of all time. It's tremendous. But The Last Show, Encore, Shoot, really, really good. Kind of prog-tinged songs, almost pomp rock, possibly. But really good, solid debut from New England. Next up is the debut album from Kiss. Now, this was a band for me that on their live material, they were really pretty good, you know, band. I always felt that their studio albums were lacking decent production, and this is a good example. It's their debut, so kind of inevitably it might have been badly produced, given it's 73 or whatever. But, you know, Strutter, good song. It's got Black Diamond on it. It's got Cold Gin. You know, there's some decent songs on it. Production kind of lets it down. Those songs were all better live, especially on the album Alive, their first live album. Next up at 29, a bit of authentic rhythm and blues with George Thorogood and Destroyers. I've seen this guy live, he's such good fun. Madison Blues, 1 bourbon, 1 scotch, 1 beer, you know, some really good songs. You know, tap your foot, sing along kind of stuff. Really good debut album from him. Next up is Canadian guitarist Pat Travers. Again, he went on to do considerably better things. The next album, which is Making Magic, and the one that followed that, I think it's Making Magic, and the one followed that, which is called Putting It Straight, are really good hard rock albums. This is okay. It's got a few covers on it, Maybelline, Hot Rod Lincoln, for example. It's also got a version of Magnolia, the J.J. Cale song, which is okay. And then some original stuff from him, Stop and Smile. It's kind of a bit funky. Medley, which is a good song that closes, but one of his classic songs that he used, I think it still does, to close his set, which is Makes No Difference, which is a fantastic song. Really is a really good song. There's also a Little Walter song on there, Boom Boom Out Go the Lights, which he plays live, which I never really liked, but it always seems to get the crowd going for some reason. Number 27, an album that I've played quite a lot recently, and I'm really starting to really enjoy it again, and that's the debut album from Captain Beyond. It features Rod Evans, formerly of Deep Purple, and a guy, can't remember his name, the guitarist, he was in Iron Butterfly. But this is an album that has kind of some proggy moments, Dancing Madly Backwards, for example. It's on Capricorn Records, it's dedicated to Duane Allman, and in Armworth you've got a real southern rock feel to the opening of that song. But Mesmerization, Eclipse and Raging River of Fear are really, really good kind of heavy songs. And then there's kind of a suite of songs in on the second side, which again just give a kind of slightly proggy feel. The vocals on here from Rod Evans, I think, are better than when he was in Deep Purple. That's probably down to the effects that are put on his voice in the studio. It sounds less baritone and a bit more suitable for the music. But yeah, decent album that. Classic debut from Lou Reed, Transformer. This is the one with Vicious, Perfect Day, Walk on the Wild Side, and they're all on side one. Tremendous album. I think it features Mick Ronson, doesn't it? Herbie Flowers, who sadly passed away recently. And it's produced by David Bowie and Mick Ronson. At number 25, we've got Mahogany Rush, Maxoom. I love Mahogany Rush, I love Frank Marino, and this is a really good debut, considering this is 1973, and I think it's 73, and recorded by Frank Marino, who at the time was about 17. I mean, you know, there's some real competent guitar playing on here. Yeah, he went on to do considerably better things, but that's a really decent debut. A bit of Southern rock now at 24. This is the debut album from The Outlaws. I mean, there's a Southern rock cover for you and a logo and a Southern rock name, isn't it? But there's got some absolutely classic Southern rock songs on here. There Goes Another Love Song, Song in the Breeze, and their Freebird, which is Greengrass, and High Tides, which is magnificent. Next up is an album with a Deep Purple connection. So this is Moxie's self-titled debut. This was a Canadian band. They were recording in the studio. The guitarist fell out with the producer, I think, and kind of walked out, was asked to go, I can't remember which. And I think the something like their manager at the time had been road manager for the James Gang and knew that Tommy Bolin was nearby and asked him to come in and finish some of the solos. So on things like Moon Rider, Still I Wonder, Out of the Darkness, he plays some absolutely brilliant solos. So Moon Rider especially, great solo on that. So that's Canadian band Moxie, their debut. Good hard rock stuff. At number 22, debut album from Foreigner. This is a band that really hit the ground running, I think. A mix of UK and US personnel, but Long Way From Home, Feels Like the First Time, and Cold as Ice are on here. They're tremendous singles, great album. Next up is a short but sweet debut from a New York band who I've seen live. I think they supported Sammy Hagar, if it was from memory, I think. And it's Rock City by Riot. This is from 1977. Good hard rock band, good hard rock debut. It's only about 30 minutes long. In fact, the first side's about 13 minutes long. But the first side's got Desperation, Warrior, which is just, if you've not heard Warrior by Riot and you like hard rock, stream it, it's brilliant. Rock City, Overdrive, yeah, some really good songs on the debut album from Riot from 77. Next up is a little bit of a cheat because it is a debut album by him, although he was part of a band at the time, and this band all did solo projects at the same time, but he has gone on to a solo career, so I'm going to have it. And that's the debut album from Ace Frehley from Kiss. So Kiss all decided to produce solo albums. Paul Stanley's was okay, the other two were awful, but Ace Frehley's, I think, was the best. And in Rip It Out, Speeding Back to My Baby, Snowblind, and of course his brilliant version of the Russ Ballard song New York Grooves on there. So that's a really good debut album. Here's a classic, I think. This is a great album. This is the first album from Tom Petty and the Heartbreakers. I've always loved this album. I remember buying as a single anything that's rock and roll, An American Girl back in 1977 and loving them. And they were kind of lumped into the punk genre a little bit, although they weren't punk, because American Girl is very, very birdsy. But this is a tremendous album. You know, Rocking Around With You, Breakdown, that's another single. That was brilliant. Anything that's rock and roll, yeah. American Girl, which is just a masterpiece of a song. Number 18, excuse me, number 18, the debut from Aerosmith. They again went on to better things, but this is a solid debut. You know, I think the 70s version of Aerosmith is a really good rock band. Make It, Dream On, which is obviously one of their classics, which is just brilliant. Mama King, Walking the Dog, and a song called One Way Street, which is a longer song, and I think it's just one of the best songs they recorded. So that's the debut from Aerosmith from 73. Have to include this one. It's a bit of a difficult album to place, this one, a bit like, you know, the ones I showed earlier. Marquee Moon by Television, often seen as a guitar classic, which I think it is. I do, if I'm honest, blow hot and cold with this album. Sometimes I think, oh, it's genius, and other times I think, a bit overrated. I can never quite make up my mind, but right now, this is number 17 in my list. At number 16, on the debut from Steely Dan, Can't Buy a Thrill, which is a great album. You know, musically and musicianship in this band is always top notch. So Jeff Baxter, Walter Becker, two of the founding members of, obviously, Donald Fagen's on here. Elliot Randall plays the guitar on one of their famous songs, which is Reeling in the Years, which is, you know, tremendous song. Dirty Work, Do It Again. There's some really good songs on their debut. Yes, they went on to better things for sure, but that's a great debut. One of my favourite US punk debuts next is this one. It's raw, kind of just in your face punk. It's just brilliant. Heartbreakers, LAMF, Born to Lose, Chinese Rocks, Get Off the Phone, I Wanna Be Loved, and I think in One Track Mind, one of the best punk songs. It's just brilliant. And so that's the debut from the Heartbreakers. Next up is an album from the same year, 1977. Again, a little bit difficult to place. It does contain, as track one on side one, one of my most favourite songs of all time. I still play it, probably weekly. I adore it, and this album is just quirky and brilliant, and I love it. It's the Modern Lovers debut, and the song is, of course, Roadrunner, which is brilliant. But in Astral Plane, Old World, Pablo Picasso, She Cracked, Modern World, there's some absolutely brilliant. I love the simplicity of this album. It's so good, and the kind of, you know, quirky little vocal delivery that Jonathan Richman has. It's just brilliant. Next up is a debut album from Journey. Now, this is obviously the same Journey as produced Don't Stop Believing, Who's Crying Now, all of those, you know, those ballads, Open Arms. But this is much more kind of jazz rock. So this is the first album when Neil Schon and Greg Rowley left Santana. They played on Caravanserai to great effect, and they produced their own band. This has got some real jazz rock moments. So Ross Valerie and Ainsley Dunbar are on here as well. And they do employ, only for this album, a second guitarist. But in Neil Schon, they have somebody who is just technically brilliant. Now, he played with Carlos Santana. He's not maybe as original as Carlos Santana, but technically he is better, I think. And there's some tremendous songs on here. A couple of really kind of jazz rocky moments, fusiony moments. So Topaz and Kuatek, I don't know if that's right, if I said that right, but they're great songs. I love Greg Rowley's voice. So on the songs that have vocals, he's got a real velvety quality to his voice. And the opening track of A Lifetime is an absolute classic. It's very different from, you know, 80s Journey, but brilliant. At number 12, the debut album from Heart. I've always loved this album, you know, hugely influenced, of course, by Led Zeppelin, but in Ann Wilson, they have one of the greatest female vocalists of all time in any genre, I think. She's got a tremendous set of pipes. She really is a brilliant singer, and this is a really solid debut. Magic Man, Crazy on You, Dreamboat Annie, and that's just the first three songs. It's a really good album. And as I said, Ann Wilson, I'm not a great lover of the female voice, actually, if I'm honest, especially in rock, but her voice is something else, and she can still sing, I believe. So, and they did a wonderful version, didn't they, of Stairway to Heaven at the Kennedy Honours. Oh, if you haven't seen that, it's breathtaking. Okay, at number 10, so just outside the top 10, debut album from The Cars, kind of power pop, new wavy kind of album, but there are some really rocky moments on this as well, so check out the guitar solo on Don't You Want, or Don't You Stop, really good guitar moment. What's his name? Elliot something, isn't it? I can't remember his name. Good Times Roll, Best Friend's Girl, Just What I Needed, that's the first three songs, tremendous. Just What I Needed, one of my favourite songs from the 70s, adore it. That's the debut from The Cars. So here's my top 10, and at number 10, his best album by a long way, I think, and this is the debut album from Ted Nugent. I saw him live in about 81. He came swinging on a rope in a kind of Tarzan outfit. He was just mad, and I don't like his kind of attitude. I don't like his in between song patter or his politics, or him particularly as a person, but this is a really good debut album, some brilliant guitar moments. Stranglehold, the opening song, possibly his best song. You know, there's a video possibly there, isn't it? Bands whose first song on their debut album was their best one. Stranglehold, Stormtrooping, Just What the Doctor Ordered, Snakeskin Cowboys, Motor City Madhouse. You know, there's some brilliant songs on here with some wonderful guitar moments, and this is a cracking debut album, and it makes my number 10. At number 9, I've got to have the brothers in there somewhere, the Ramones. This is their debut album from 1976, seminal debut album, hugely influential, blitzkrieg bop. One of my favourite Ramones songs, Judy is a Punk, Now I Want to Sniff Some Glue, Let's Dance, their version of that, tremendous debut album, got to have that somewhere. Next album may surprise some people. Now, one of the reasons this isn't higher is because I very rarely can play an album like this, punky album, Ramones album, all the way through. This album, I can play it in its entirety and love everything about it. And so this might surprise some people, but it's Cabretta by Mink DeVille. I've always loved this album from 1977 until now. So the hit single at the time was Spanish Stroll, which I just thought was a fantastic single. I loved it. But there's other songs on here that are equally as good. Venus of Avenue D, Little Girl, One Way Street, Mixed Up, Shook Up Girl, Gunslinger is great, Cadillac Walk. I think this is an absolutely brilliant album, and that's why it's number 8 in my list. If you've not heard it and you kind of, you know, you've heard Spanish Stroll, but you haven't heard the rest of it, do stream it. It's absolutely tremendous. Next up is the debut album from a Canadian three-piece who went on to very, very different things. So this is the only album to feature a drummer called John Rutsey. He was replaced by Neil Peart. The band is obviously Rush. This is their debut. This is on Anthem Records, so a reissue of their debut, but it's absolutely brilliant. It's very Led Zeppelin-esque. Finding My Way, Need Some Love, Take a Friend, Here to Again, which is brilliant. What You're Doing, In the Mood, Before and After, and I think one of their classics, and I think it's the last song they ever played live, which was Working Man, which is just brilliant song. The guitar work, Alex Lifeson. Is he underrated, underappreciated? I don't know. He often doesn't get talked about in the same kind of way that the revered guitarists do. He should be. He's absolutely brilliant. As is the next guy as well. Next guy was a replacement for Ritchie Blackmore in Deep Purple. This is the debut solo album from Tommy Bolin. Yes, he played with Zephyr, and he played on Billy Cobham's Spectrum to great effect on a few tracks there. He played with the James Gang. He played with Alphonse Mouzon. This was a guy that could play everything, and this album represents everything as well. So we've got here some kind of funky, rocky tunes in The Grind and Homeward Strut. We've got a beautiful ballad in Dreamer, a bit of kind of Latin with Savannah Woman, a really good rocker in Teaser, which I think Motley Crue may have covered. But it's got People, which is a great song, Marching Powder, which is a real good jazz fusion song, Wild Dogs, which he played with Deep Purple, which is a great rock song with a beautiful guitar work at the end, and a song called Lotus to finish. This is on Nempera Records. This is the US version of it. No track listing difference, but a slightly different label. But just a brilliant album with so much variety and just brilliant playing on it. Okay, next up, this is top 5 now. Top 5, one of my favourite bands. Love this band. Saw them live in '78. This is the debut album of Blue Oyster Cult. Not their best album, I think that's Secret Treaties, but it's right up there. Their first 3 albums are all roughly black and white cover. They're often called the black and white period. This is their debut. It's wonderful. We've got what we got? Transminorcon MC, which is brilliant. Then came The Last Days of May. Better live, but a fantastic storytelling song with some beautiful guitar. Stairway to the Stars, Before the Kiss, a Red Cap. Wonderful. They have some wonderful titles. They're a bit like Budgie in having these kind of bizarre titles. She's as Beautiful as a Foot, which is a really good song. Cities on Flame, rock and roll, tremendous rock song. Workshop of the Telescopes, great. This is a cracking debut from a brilliant band, Blue Oyster Cult. We're in the top 4, folks, and we're going to a bit of southern rock for number 4, the opening of the debut album from Lynyrd Skynyrd, pronounced Lynyrd Skynyrd, so a band named after their gym teacher, Leonard Skinner, and this is their debut album, which is just brilliant. I don't think they ever bettered this, although Street Survivors for me comes close. I Ain't the One, what a tremendous song. Tuesday's Gone, beautiful. Simple Man is tremendous, but in Freebird they have, wow, an absolute classic. I don't tire of that song. I love it. I'm going to have it at my funeral. We're in the top 3 here, and at number 3 is the first band I ever saw live, and I didn't realise I'd seen them, which is a bizarre thing. I was only 11. This band was supporting Status Quo, and I don't really remember, other than there was a loud band playing and then Status Quo came on afterwards. And I didn't find out for several years later the band I saw was this band, Montrose. This is their debut album from '73, features a very young Sammy Hagar, along with a couple of other guys who went on to play in his band. That's Bill Church and Denny Carmassi and Ronnie Montrose, who was the guitar player. This is a hard rock classic. It's absolutely fantastic. I'm sure you've heard it. Space Station number 5. The opening track, Rock the Nation, is just brilliant. Bad Motor Scooter is tremendous. That's the first 3 songs. Oh, it's just incredible. Good Rocking Tonight, One Thing on My Mind, Make It Last. Chock full of absolute hard rock classics. It's a brilliant album. Okay, top 2. You could probably guess from, debut albums from the 1970s, North American, who's missing. Well, at number 2, of course, it's Van Halen. Did they ever better this album? I'm not sure they did. The guitar tone on this is absolutely out of this world. The guitar playing on this is out of this world. Jimi Hendrix, Are You Experienced, was an amazing debut and a guitar player that changed the game completely. This was the second person to come along with that instrument and change the game completely. So Eddie Van Halen, obviously departed now, but just brilliant. This is an amazing album. Running with the Devil, Eruption, that guitar solo that just changed everything with a double tapping thing. I'm the One, Ain't Talking About Love, a great version of You Really Got Me, which I think the Kinks even think is a better version than theirs. Just a brilliant debut album, which leads me to the greatest North American rock debut album of the 1970s, and there can only be one for me. In the first side, it has probably one of the most perfect sides of vinyl ever, and that is the debut album from Boston, More Than a Feeling, Peace of Mind, Foreplay, Long Time. That's side 1. It's good enough just for those 3 tracks. It's absolutely amazing. Second side, Rock and Roll Band, Smoking, which is great, Hitch a Ride, Something About You, Let Me Take You Home Tonight. But side 1 is just perfection. I never tire of More Than a Feeling. I could listen to it every day and love it. It's timeless. This album is brilliant. And there are my 40 plus greatest North American rock debut albums from the 1970s. Tell me what you think in the comments below, and I'm sure I'll be back sometime with another video. Cheers.